Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the massive window of Earth Defense Command watching the stars beyond. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't care. Today was the day that would change everything for humanity. "Admiral, they're here," Captain Ryan Brooks said as he entered the command center. His voice was steady, but Morrison could see the excitement in his eyes. After 300 years of reaching for the stars, humanity was finally meeting someone else. Morrison turned from the window and walked to the main display screen. Dozens of officers filled the room, all watching the same thing. On the screen, massive ships hung in space at the edge of their solar system. The alien vessels were beautiful in a way that human ships could never be. They looked like they had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift color in the starlight. "How many ships?" Morrison asked. 47, sir," replied Commander Amy Torres from her station. "All much larger than our biggest battleships. But sir, they're not moving toward us. They're just waiting." Dr. Lisa Grant pushed through the crowd of officers. She had been Earth's leading expert on alien life for 20 years, even though she had never seen any. Now her moment had come. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. They want to talk." Morrison nodded. "Put it through." The main screen changed to show a figure that was clearly not human. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow softly. Its eyes were large and dark, and it had no hair. When it spoke, the words came through perfectly clear in English. "Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Vale of the Zephyrian Collective. We have watched your species with great interest as you have spread to nearby star systems. You show much promise, but we come with an urgent warning." The room fell silent. Morrison felt his heart beating faster. "We're listening." "You must not expand beyond the Kepler 442 system," the alien continued. "That region of space is patrolled by beings we call the Void Hunters. They have destroyed 17 civilizations that crossed into their territory. We barely escaped them ourselves many years ago." Dr. Grant stepped forward. "Can you tell us more about these Void Hunters? What are they? How do they attack?" Ambassador Vale's expression grew darker. "They are ancient beings that feed on life itself. They sleep for long periods, but when they wake, they consume everything. Planets, ships, entire populations simply vanish. We lost our homeworld to them 300 years ago." Morrison crossed his arms. Something about this didn't feel right. "Why should we believe you? How do we know you're not just trying to keep us from expanding into territory you want for yourselves?" "Admiral," Dr. Grant said quietly, "maybe we should listen to what they have to say." But Morrison was already thinking like a military commander. These aliens had appeared with a huge fleet right at Earth's doorstep. They were clearly more advanced than humans. Maybe this warning was just their way of keeping humanity contained while they decided what to do with them. "We have prepared a gift for you," Ambassador Vale said. "Information about the civilizations that were destroyed, including their final transmissions. Perhaps this will help you understand the danger." A data packet arrived at the communication station. Commander Torres quickly ran it through their security systems and then displayed the contents. The room watched in silence as they saw images of destroyed worlds, empty cities, and the final desperate messages from dying civilizations. 1. Message showed an alien species not unlike the Zephyrians. Their leader spoke with panic in his voice. "The hunters have found us. Our weapons do nothing. They're draining the life from our people. If anyone receives this message, do not come here. Do not follow our path. Save yourselves." Another message showed a different species, more like humans but with blue skin. "Day 14 of the attack. Half our population is gone. The hunters don't kill quickly. They take the life force slowly, feeding on our energy. Our children are gone. Our elders are gone. Soon we will all be gone." Dr. Grant wiped tears from her eyes. "These messages are real, Admiral. The scientific data they contain matches what we know about those star systems. They're all dead now. Empty." Morrison studied the data, but his mind was already made up. "It's very convenient that you show up just as we're planning our next wave of expansion. How do we know you didn't destroy these civilizations yourselves?" Ambassador Vale looked sad. "Admiral Morrison, I understand your doubt. But please consider the cost of being wrong. If you are right and we are lying, you will gain some new star systems. If we are right and you are wrong, your entire species could be destroyed. The Earth Colonial Council has already approved the expansion, Morrison said firmly. 3 colony ships are ready to launch next month. We've invested too much to turn back now. Dr. Grant stepped between Morrison and the screen. Admiral, we need to think about this carefully. The evidence they've shown us is overwhelming. 17 civilizations don't just disappear for no reason. 17 civilizations that were weak, Morrison replied. Humanity has never backed down from a fight. If these void hunters exist, we'll deal with them like we've dealt with every other challenge. Captain Brooks looked uncomfortable. Sir, maybe we should at least delay the expansion until we can study this information more carefully. Morrison turned to face his officers. He could see doubt in some of their faces, but he also saw the excitement of expansion, of reaching for new worlds. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of spreading across the galaxy. They wouldn't be stopped by stories and warnings from strangers. The expansion continues as planned, Morrison announced. If these void hunters want to fight, they'll get one. On the screen, Ambassador Vale closed his large, dark eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, there was deep sadness there. Then we have done our duty. We cannot save those who will not be saved. We leave you with this warning beacon. Place it at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. When the hunters come, it may buy you a few extra minutes to send a final message to those you love. The transmission ended. The alien ships began to move away from Earth, heading back toward deep space. Morrison watched them go and felt a moment of doubt. What if they were right? What if humanity was about to make the biggest mistake in its history? But then he thought about the 3 beautiful new worlds waiting for human colonists. He thought about the resources, the opportunities, the chance to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. The warnings were clear, but Morrison's arrogance overpowered his caution. Prepare the colony ships, he ordered. We launch as scheduled. 6 months had passed since the Zephyrians left Earth with their warnings. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Defiance, watching 3 massive colony ships move through space ahead of him. The UES Pioneer, UES Horizon, and UES New Dawn carried 50,000 colonists between them, all heading toward their new homes beyond the forbidden boundary. Captain, we're crossing into the restricted zone now, reported his navigation officer. Brooks nodded but felt a cold knot in his stomach. He remembered Ambassador Vale's dark eyes and the sadness in the alien's voice. But orders were orders, and Fleet Admiral Morrison had been very clear. Humanity would not be stopped by alien fears. Dr. Lisa Grant sat at a science station on the bridge. She had fought hard against this mission, but the Colonial Council had insisted she come along. At least if something goes wrong, we'll have our best xenobiologist here to figure out what happened, they had said. She didn't find that comforting. Any sign of these void hunters? Brooks asked her. Grant checked her instruments for the 100th time that day. Nothing yet. But Captain, if the Zephyrians were right, the hunters might be sleeping. Our presence could wake them up. Well, we'll deal with that if it happens, Brooks replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. The first planet, designated New Eden, appeared on their screens after 2 weeks of travel. It was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents that looked almost like Earth. The UES Pioneer moved into orbit and began sending down survey teams. Colonel Dan Parker led the ground teams. He was a tough Marine who had served in 3 colonial wars, but even he was impressed by what they found. Captain Brooks, you need to see this, he radioed from the surface. This planet is incredible. Rich soil, perfect atmosphere, and mineral deposits everywhere. It's like it was made for us. The second planet, Hope's Landing, was even better. It had vast forests of strange but beautiful trees and mountains full of precious metals. The UES Horizon began setting up the second colony without any problems. The third planet, Haven, was the most amazing of all. It had floating islands held up by some kind of natural anti-gravity effect. The colonists from UES New Dawn were excited to explore this wonder. Engineer Kate Sullivan, chief engineer of the New Dawn, sent regular reports back to Earth. Fleet Admiral Morrison was right, she transmitted. The Zephyrians were just trying to scare us away from the best real estate in the galaxy. We've hit the jackpot out here. Back on Earth, Morrison read the reports with great satisfaction. He had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the successful launch, and now his decision looked brilliant. The media called him a hero. The Colonial Council praised his courage and vision, but Dr. Grant was not celebrating. Her instruments kept picking up strange readings at the edge of their sensor range. Captain, I'm detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. They're not like Zephyrian technology either. Brooks came to look at her screens. Could it be natural phenomena? Maybe that's what scared the Zephyrians. I don't think so, Grant said, pointing to the data. These readings show patterns like they're artificial, and they're moving. Brooks felt that cold knot in his stomach again. Moving how? Slowly, but deliberately. Like something big is waking up. On the bridge, Commander Amy Torres was monitoring communications from all 3 colonies. Everything seemed perfect. The colonists were happy, the resources were flowing, and there were no signs of trouble anywhere. Then, during the 3rd week, Colony Site Charlie on Haven went silent. Torres, when did we last hear from Charlie Base? Brooks asked. Yesterday at 1800 hours, sir. Standard check-in. Everything was normal. Try to reach them now. Torres sent the call, but got only static in return. No response, Captain. Could be equipment failure. But Grant was staring at her instruments with growing fear. Captain, the energy readings just spiked. Something big just activated near Haven. Brooks ordered a reconnaissance flight to Colony Site Charlie. The pilot, Lieutenant Jack Miller, took a small scout ship down to the planet's surface. What he found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. Captain Brooks, you need to hear this. Miller's voice was shaking. Colony Site Charlie is empty. All 8,000 colonists are just gone. Gone? What do you mean, gone? I mean, gone, sir. The buildings are all here, the equipment is running, I can see half-eaten meals on tables and tools left in the middle of work projects. But there are no people, no bodies, no signs of struggle, nothing. It's like everyone just vanished into thin air. Brooks felt his heart racing. Any signs of what happened? No, sir. It's like they all just stopped what they were doing and disappeared. There's a kid's toy sitting on the ground next to a sandbox. The sand is still warm where someone was playing, but the child is gone. Dr. Grant was now frantically checking all her instruments. Captain, the energy readings are getting stronger. I'm detecting massive objects moving in deep space between the stars. They're heading this way. How big? Brooks asked. Bigger than our largest battleships, much bigger. Brooks opened a communication channel to all 3 colony sites. All stations, this is Captain Brooks. We may have a situation developing. Prepare for possible evacuation. Colonel Parker's voice came back from New Eden. Captain, our perimeter. Teams are reporting strange sightings. Dark shapes moving in the forest at night. They don't show up on thermal scanners, but people are seeing them. Engineer Sullivan reported from Hope's Landing. Captain, we're getting power fluctuations in our main generators. It's like something is draining energy from our systems. Grant looked up from her station with fear in her eyes. Captain, I'm sorry. I was wrong to hope the Zephyrians were lying. The energy signatures match the data they gave us about the destroyed civilizations. The Void Hunters are real, and they're waking up. Brooks stared at the tactical display showing the positions of the 3 colonies. 50,000 human lives were spread across 3 worlds, all of them now in terrible danger. The warnings had been clear, but humanity's arrogance had brought them to this point. Send an emergency message to Earth, Brooks ordered. Tell Fleet Admiral Morrison that Ambassador Vale was right. The hunters are real, and they're coming for us. In the darkness of space, something ancient and hungry began to move toward the human colonies. The Void Hunters had slept for centuries, but the arrival of new prey had awakened them. They could sense the life energy of the human colonists like a beacon in the darkness. The hunt was about to begin, The first attack came at dawn on New Eden. Colonel Dan Parker was checking the perimeter defenses when the sky began to change. What had been normal blue morning sky turned dark, as if night was falling in the middle of the day. All units report. Parker spoke into his radio, but the responses he got back filled him with dread. Sir, Delta Team here. The darkness is moving toward us. It's not clouds, sir, it's something else. Bravo Team reporting. Our equipment is going dead. Weapons, scanners, everything is losing power. Parker looked up and saw them. Shapes in the darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved like liquid shadow but had form and purpose. As they got closer, he could see they were ships, but unlike anything humans had ever built. They looked alive, with surfaces that rippled and changed as they moved. All colonists to emergency shelters now, Parker ordered. But even as he spoke, he watched in horror as the first Void Hunter ship descended toward the main settlement. Captain Ryan Brooks saw the attack from orbit. His ship's sensors were going crazy, showing readings that made no sense. What are we looking at? He asked. Dr. Grant. Grant stared at the data with growing fear. They're not ships in the way we understand them. They're living beings, Captain. Energy creatures that can take physical form. They feed on life force itself. On the surface, the first Hunter ship landed in the center of New Eden's main plaza. Colonists ran screaming as something emerged from the ship. It was tall and dark with no clear shape. It seemed to flow rather than walk, and wherever it went, people simply collapsed. Parker watched through his binoculars as families fell to the ground, not dead but drained. Their bodies remained, but something vital was gone from them. They lay still with empty eyes, breathing but no longer alive in any meaningful way. Open fire, Parker ordered his Marines, but their weapons had no effect. Energy blasts passed right through the creature, and projectile weapons fell to the ground as if the thing wasn't even there. The Hunter moved through the settlement like death itself. It didn't hurry or show any emotion. It simply drained the life from everything it touched. Plants withered, animals collapsed, and people became empty shells. From the UES Defiance, Brooks watched 2 more Hunter ships descend toward New Eden. Can we help them? He asked. Captain, I don't think our weapons will work either, Grant replied. Look at the energy readings. These things exist partially outside our normal space. They can become solid when they want to interact with matter but return to energy form to avoid damage. Brooks opened communications with Fleet Admiral Morrison on Earth. Admiral, we need help. The Void Hunters are real and they're attacking the colonies. Morrison's face appeared on screen, looking confident. Captain, I'm already on my way with the 5th Fleet, 60 ships including our newest battleships. We'll show these aliens what human firepower can do. Sir, with respect, I don't think conventional weapons will work. These aren't normal aliens, they're something else entirely. Nonsense, Brooks. Every enemy can be defeated if you hit them hard enough. Hold position until I arrive. On Hope's Landing, engineer Kate Sullivan was trying to get the colonists evacuated when the Hunters arrived there too. The attack was even worse than on New Eden. 3 Hunter ships landed simultaneously, and the creatures that emerged moved in perfect coordination. Sullivan watched in horror as an entire family was drained. In seconds, the parents tried to protect their children, but the Hunter simply flowed around them. In moments, all 4 were empty shells on the ground. Emergency evacuation, Sullivan radioed to the UES Horizon in orbit. Get the transport ships down here, now. But as the transports descended, one of the Hunter ships rose to meet them. The alien vessel seemed to merge with the human transport, and within minutes, the ship was dead in space. The crew was still alive but no longer truly living, just like the colonists on the surface. Haven, the planet with floating islands, suffered the worst attack of all. The Hunters seemed drawn to the anti-gravity phenomena, and their feeding somehow disrupted it. The floating islands began to fall from the sky, crashing into the surface with tremendous force. The UES New Dawn tried to provide covering fire as colonists evacuated, but the ship's weapons were useless. Worse, when one Hunter ship approached, the New Dawn, it began draining power directly from the vessel's engines. Captain Brooks, this is New Dawn, came a desperate transmission. They're sucking the energy right out of our ship. Life support is failing. The crew is getting weaker, by the minute. Brooks watched helplessly as the New Dawn went dark. The ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply became a lifeless hulk floating in space, its crew drained of the energy that made them alive. Dr. Grant was working frantically at her station, analyzing everything they had seen. "Captain, I think I understand what they are. They're parasites that feed on the energy that makes life possible. Not just electrical energy, but the actual force that separates living things from dead matter. How do we fight something like that? I don't know if we can. Every civilization in the database the Zephyrians gave us tried different approaches, advanced weapons, energy shields, even nuclear weapons. Nothing worked." As they spoke, Admiral Morrison's fleet arrived in the system. 60 human warships, including the massive battleship UES Vengeance, Morrison's flagship. The Admiral opened communications with all ships. "This is Fleet Admiral Morrison. Today we show the galaxy that humanity fears nothing. All ships attack formation, target the alien vessels and fire at will." The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy cannons, missile barrages, and plasma weapons all struck the hunter ships. For a moment it looked like the attacks were working. The hunter vessels seemed to ripple and change under the assault. But then the hunters did something that froze the blood of every human who saw it. 3 of the hunter ships began to merge together, flowing into each other like liquid. They formed a single massive entity that was larger than any human battleship. The merged hunter moved toward Morrison's fleet with terrible purpose. As it approached the UES Vengeance, streams of dark energy reached out from it like tentacles. When they touched human ships, the vessels began to go dark, one by one. "All ships, fall back," Morrison ordered. But his voice was already getting weaker. The hunter entity had reached his flagship and was draining it of power. Brooks watched in horror as the pride of the human fleet became another dead hulk in space. Morrison's final transmission was barely a whisper. "Dr. Grant, you were right. God help us, you were right." The merged hunter entity turned toward the remaining human ships. Brooks realized that not only had humanity's expansion awakened these ancient terrors, but now the hunters knew where to find Earth itself. "All ships, retreat to the boundary," Brooks ordered. "We have to warn Earth before it's too late." As the surviving human ships fled toward the edge of the system, the void hunters followed slowly like predators who knew their prey had nowhere left to run. The warnings had been clear, but humanity's arrogance had led them to this moment of absolute terror. The hunt was no longer just beginning, it was almost over and humanity was losing. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the last transport ship dock with his vessel. They had been running for 3 days now, carrying the few thousand colonists who had survived the hunter attacks. Behind them, the dark shapes of the void hunters followed like shadows of death. "How many did we save?" Brooks asked Colonel Dan Parker, who had just come aboard from the surface of New Eden. Parker's face was grim. 4,000, maybe 5,000 total, out of 50,000 colonists. He sat down heavily in a chair. "Captain, I've been in wars before. I've seen people die. But this was different. They didn't just kill our people. They took something from them that made them human." Dr. Lisa Grant was working frantically at her science station, trying to understand what they were facing. "Captain, I've been studying the hunter energy signatures. I think I found something important." Brooks walked over to her station. "What is it?" "The hunters aren't always in the same form. Sometimes they're pure energy, sometimes they're solid matter. But there's a moment when they change from one to the other where they're vulnerable. It only lasts a few seconds, but during that time they can be hurt." "How do we hurt them?" Grant pulled up her data on the screen. "It would require a specific type of energy pulse, timed perfectly with their transformation. But Captain, we don't have the technology to create that kind of pulse. Our weapons aren't designed for it." Brooks felt a spark of hope. "What about the Zephyrians? They said they escaped from the hunters. Maybe they know how to fight them." "It's worth trying," Grant agreed. "But first we need to contact them." Commander Amy Torres had been listening to their conversation. "Captain, I still have the communication frequency the Zephyrians used when they visited Earth. I can try to reach them." "Do it," Brooks ordered. As Torres worked to establish contact, Brooks looked out at the stars. The hunters were still following them, but they weren't trying to catch up. It was like they were herding the human ships toward something. "Captain," Torres called out. "I'm getting a response from the Zephyrians." The screen flickered, and Ambassador Vale's face appeared. The alien looked older somehow, more tired than before. "Captain Brooks, we have been monitoring your situation. We are deeply sorry for what has happened to your people." "Can you help us?" Brooks asked. "Dr. Grant thinks there might be a way to fight the hunters, but we need technology we don't have." Vale was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, my people swore never to engage the hunters again after we lost our homeworld. But your species showed courage in trying to protect your colonies. Perhaps it is time for us to show courage as well." "What do you mean?" "We will share our defensive technology with you, but you must understand even with our help this will be a desperate fight. The hunters are fully awakened now, and they know where your homeworld is located." Brooks felt his heart sink. "They're going to attack Earth?" "Yes. Your expansion into their territory has shown them new feeding grounds. They will not stop until they have consumed all human life." Dr. Grant leaned forward. "Ambassador, how many species have tried to fight the hunters?" 17 species before yours. Some were more advanced than humans. Some were more numerous. All were destroyed. But you survived," Brooks pointed out. "We ran. We abandoned our homeworld and fled to the edges of the galaxy. We have spent 300 years in exile, watching other species make the same mistake we did." Vale's voice grew stronger. "But no more. If humanity is willing to make a stand, the Zephyrian Collective will stand with you." Over the next day, Zephyrian ships began arriving at the rendezvous point. They brought with them survivors from other species that had fought the hunters. An insect-like race called the Krolix had lost their empire but saved a few million individuals. The crystal beings known as the Vilth had once ruled 100 worlds, but now only a few thousand remained. Each species had tried different ways to fight the hunters, and each had failed. But Dr. Grant studied all their data and began to form a plan. "The key is the transformation moment," she explained to the assembled commanders. "When the hunters change from energy to matter, they're solid for exactly 3.7 seconds. During that time, they can be damaged by a resonance weapon that matches their energy frequency." "What kind of resonance weapon?" asked Kalen, the Zephyrian war leader who had joined them. "Something that forces all the hunters in an area to transform at the same time, then hits them with a massive energy pulse while they're vulnerable." Brooks studied the plan. "How big would this weapon need to be?" "The size of a small moon," Grant admitted, "and it would need to be positioned right in the middle of the hunter formation. Whoever operates it would have to fly it directly into the enemy fleet." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. It was a suicide mission. "How long do we have to build this weapon?" Brooks asked. Commander Torres looked up from her communication station. "Captain, I'm receiving emergency broadcasts from Earth. The hunters have crossed into the solar system. They're 3 days away from reaching Earth itself." Brooks felt the weight of humanity's survival on his shoulders. "How fast can we get back to Earth?" 2 days if we push our engines to the maximum," his navigator reported. "And the weapon?" Dr. Grant looked at the technical specifications. "With Zephyrian help, we might be able to modify one of their larger ships, but it would take at least 4 days to complete the modifications." "We don't have 4 days," Kalen spoke up. "Captain Brooks, there is another way. We have a ship that was already modified to fight the hunters. It was our last desperate attempt to save our homeworld. The weapon failed then because we couldn't get close enough to the hunters. But with human courage and Zephyrian technology together—" "You're talking about a suicide run," Colonel Parker said bluntly. "Yes," Kalen agreed. "But it's the only chance any of us have. If Earth falls, the hunters will spread throughout the galaxy. Every species, every world will eventually be consumed." Brooks looked around the room at the faces of the survivors. Humans, Zephyrians, Krolix, Velth, and others. All of them refugees from the hunters' hunger. All of them depending on one desperate plan. "How many ships can we gather for the final battle?" 200, maybe 300 total, Kalen replied. Against thousands of hunters. Then we'd better make sure our plan works, Brooks said. Because this is humanity's last chance, and we're not going to waste it. As the combined fleet prepared to jump to Earth, Dr. Grant made final adjustments to the resonance weapon. She had found something in the data that she hadn't told the others about yet. The weapon would work, but the person operating it would need to be in direct contact with hunter energy to calibrate it properly. She had already been exposed to that energy during her research. She was dying, and she knew it. But maybe her death could save everyone else. The final battle for Earth was about to begin. The Earth Defense Fleet had never looked so small. Captain Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching as 300 ships from different species formed up around Earth. In the distance, thousands of Void Hunter vessels moved through space like a dark tide of death. Captain, they're beautiful and terrible at the same time, Colonel Dan Parker said, looking at the Hunter fleet. The alien ships seemed to flow and change shape as they moved, sometimes looking like vessels, sometimes like living creatures. Dr. Lisa Grant worked at her station, making final adjustments to the resonance weapon. The modified Zephyrian ship hung in space nearby, ready for its deadly mission. She could feel the hunter energy in her body getting stronger. Soon she wouldn't be able to hide her condition from the others. All ships, this is Captain Brooks, he announced over the communication system. Today we fight not just for humanity, but for every living being in the galaxy. The hunters have taken too much from all of us. Today we take back our future. War leader Kalen's voice came over the radio from his Zephyrian command ship. Captain Brooks, our sensors show the hunters are beginning to merge into larger entities, just like they did at your colonies. Brooks watched the tactical display as dozens of hunter ships began flowing together, forming massive creatures that dwarfed even the largest human battleships. How many are merging? At least 50 separate merger events. Each combined entity is the size of a space station. Grant looked up from her work. Captain, that's actually good news. The larger they get, the more unstable their energy becomes during transformation. The resonance weapon will be more effective. On Earth's surface, billions of people watched the sky. They could see the battle formations of their defenders, and beyond them, the dark shapes of the approaching enemy. In cities around the world, families hugged each other and hoped their protectors could somehow win an impossible fight. The first engagement began when the human Zephyrian fleet opened fire. Energy beams and missiles filled space, but just like before, most weapons passed harmlessly through the hunters. The few hits that connected seemed to cause no damage. Switch to Zephyrian energy weapons, Brooks ordered. Those are our only chance of hurting them. The Zephyrian ships had shared their energy technology with the human fleet. The weapons were weaker than human guns, but could actually damage the hunters when they were in solid form. The problem was hitting them at the right moment. A massive merged hunter entity, formed from over 100 smaller ships, moved toward the center of the defense fleet. As it approached, streams of dark energy reached out like tentacles, touching human and Zephyrian ships alike. The UES Houston is going dark, reported Commander Amy Torres. Life signs are fading fast. Brooks watched as ship after ship lost power and crew to the hunters' energy drain. They were losing badly, just like every other species before them. Grant, how much longer do you need? He called out. The weapon is ready, Captain, but I need to tell you something. Grant stood up from her station, and Brooks could see that her skin was pale and her eyes had dark circles around them. I've been exposed to hunter energy during my research. It's killing me slowly, but it also means I can interface with their energy patterns directly. What does that mean? It means I can pilot the resonance weapon and calibrate it from inside the hunter formation. But Captain, I won't be coming back from this mission. Brooks felt his heart break. Grant had been right about everything from the beginning, and now she was going to sacrifice her life to save everyone else. Lisa, there has to be another way. There isn't, and we don't have time to argue about it. Grant walked toward the shuttle bay. Captain, when I activate the weapon, you'll have about 30 seconds while the hunters are vulnerable. Hit them with everything you have. Colonel Parker stepped forward. Doctor, it's been an honor serving with you. Grant smiled sadly. Take care of what's left of humanity, Colonel. And remember the lesson we've learned here. Sometimes the greatest courage is knowing when to listen. Grant's shuttle launched from the Defiance and headed toward the modified Zephyrian weapon ship. As she flew through the battle, she could see human and alien ships fighting desperately against the hunters. Some were winning small victories, but overall the defense fleet was being destroyed. She docked with the weapon ship and quickly moved to the control center. The resonance device was massive, taking up most of the ship's interior. Grant began the startup sequence and felt the hunter energy in her body responding to the weapon's power. "All ships, this is Dr. Grant," she transmitted. "I'm taking the weapon into the hunter formation now. When you see the resonance pulse, that's your signal to attack with everything you have." The weapon ship moved deeper into the hunter fleet. The alien entities seemed to sense something different about this vessel and began converging on it. Grant watched as dozens of massive hunter creatures surrounded her ship. "Lisa, you don't have to do this." Brooks's voice came over the radio. "Yes, I do," Grant replied. "This is what I was meant to do. Take care, Ryan." Grant activated the resonance weapon. The device filled the ship with brilliant white light as it sent out a pulse that forced every hunter in the area to transform from energy to solid matter at the same time. For exactly 3.7 seconds, the ancient predators were vulnerable. "Now," Brooks screamed into his communicator. "All ships fire now." The combined fleet unleashed everything they had. Zephyrian energy weapons, human missiles, Krolix plasma cannons, and Velth crystal beams all struck the solid hunter entities. For the first time in the battle, the hunters were actually taking damage. The largest merged hunter, the one that had been draining ship after ship, began to break apart under the concentrated fire. Pieces of its dark matter fell away like dead skin, and its energy patterns became chaotic and unstable. But the resonance pulse was destroying Grant's ship as well. The weapon had used her life force to calibrate itself, and now both she and the device were burning out together. "Tell Earth that we won," Grant transmitted weakly. "Tell them that the warnings were clear, but we found the courage to listen to them in the end." The weapon ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. When the light faded, the hunter fleet was in chaos. Dozens of the merged entities had been destroyed, and the rest were retreating back into deep space. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but at a terrible cost. Of the 50 billion people who had lived on Earth and in the colonies, less than 20 billion remained. The price of ignoring the warnings had been devastating. Captain Brooks, now the senior commander of Earth's defense forces, signed a treaty with the Zephyrians establishing permanent boundaries and mutual protection. Humanity would never again expand beyond safe limits without careful consultation with their alien allies. Years later, Brooks stood in a memorial garden dedicated to Dr. Lisa Grant and all those who had died in the Hunter War. A simple plaque read, "They warned us clearly, but arrogance overpowered caution. We learned to listen, but the lesson came at great cost." Humanity survived, but they were forever changed. They had learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from pushing forward, but from having the wisdom to stop and listen to those who have walked the dangerous path before you.